right, now we'll go over to this. Now this one's going to be a little more difficult because it's going to have a lot of wires to it. So, here's my long screwdriver. Same kind of screws. There you go, Willie. That hold on the speedometer. We'll hold this on. It has 4 on the outside. So we're going to pull these out. Anyways, to put these back in, you use a screw starter, which usually has a handle on it, and it's got a little slot and a little twisty thing. So you twist it, and you stick it in the screw, and then it holds the screw. I will show you when I get this all out. So, in fact, I think I'll grab it now for a second, okay? This is a screw starter. Let's start. See that this one right here, if you look at it, it's tapered. See the taper? Mm-hmm. That's for Phillips. This is a flat one. This is for slotted screws. They are very slick. What you do, they're spring loaded, and this is in the unlocked position. You look at the end, it's 3 pieces and they're twisted. So can you somebody hold the light so I can talk to? There we go, perfect. So to make this thing work, you twist it and pull it out, and you can see they're all lined up. Then you stick this thing on there and push it, and it holds it. Pretty slick, huh? And when you start the screw, you can just pull it out and reset it, and then put your next screw in. Very slick.
That's awesome.
How is it holding it?
It's spring loaded.
There's an inner slot that will bind in the
See how
slot of the
see how the middle twists?
Yeah.
When you push it in, it twists and it locks it and holds it. Pretty slick, huh?
So a magnetic screwdriver won't work because it's aluminum?
Magnetic screwdrivers work great on steel. Not all screws are steel. And then magnetic screwdrivers like to make the screw go sideways on you sometimes.
Okay.
They work great for Phillips. Magnetics are really good for Phillips, but not so much for slots.
And where would you get that?
You can get it anywhere. A good tool place, go online, screw starter, there's all kinds of sources. Anyways, we'll carry on here. That's just my little plug for tools. I should have gone on tool time. There we go. That is much better. Is the light okay for you, Steve?
Yep.
Okay, good. I can see now. That helps. I've been a little nervous. No, I can see. I've been able to catch all these screws up to now, but that one... Okay.
So somebody doing this for the first time should probably have 3 of those cookie jar lids, right?
Well, yeah, you go with your own instinct on that. Yes. It's... and somebody with a little more... Like I said, I've done so many of these, I know where every screw goes on this whole car, basically, by memory. But if you want to make sure you get them all in the right place, lay out something and lay them all out and mark it if you like. This one's a little... Oh, there we go. Now this has a lot of wires to it. Okay. And we're going to have to pull all these wires off, just so you know, and mark them all. So that's the back of a Silver Cloud one, and this actually has one of those remote cables also to set the clock. See that? Huh. That's right down there, and you can set your clock that way.
Do it again.
See that?
I see it.
And it has a nice little twisty cable.
Okay, well the odometer is being taken out because it doesn't work. Is there something wrong with this one?
The clock doesn't work on this. Okay? Whoa. And they even come with their own little wool sleeve. That's to help prevent shorting out of anything, but also it keeps rattles out. If you're driving down the road, you get any kind of vibration, that metal cable could be bouncing against another piece of metal and you'll hear a rattle. So. Okay, to mark wires, I use masking tape and a Sharpie. So when we're doing that, we'll do that. Another trick I use is there are 4 instruments and a clock. I take the wires that go to each instrument and I will zip tie them together. See So there's no confusion. At least you know those two wires go to one thing. As you can see, one of these has 1, 2, 3 to this post. No, 4. 4 to that post and 1 to the other. Now that one. And part of the reason is what they'll do is they'll run, all of these instruments need, first of all, voltage, ground, and they usually, if it's a temperature gauge or a fuel gauge or an oil pressure gauge, they'll have a sending unit, which is a remote device. It's a transducer. In other words, it takes mechanical motion and turns it to an electrical signal. And these use varying ground signals. So the instrument itself needs 3 inputs. It needs a voltage supply, it needs a ground for the instrument, and then it needs the variable grounding from the transducer or the sending units. And that's what makes generally they're either, I think, a magnetic, or they'll use a bimetal, which is, they'll use a bimetal, a mechanical thing, which is 2 pieces of metal that are dissimilar put together, and they wrap wire around it, and they heat it up, and it'll bend, because one type of metal will bend more than the other, and it'll cause that motion, which is connected to the needle, and makes it move. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
I believe so. I'm checking with the professional over there. Okay, now, so anyways, the point I was making is they will send a voltage supply from the ignition switch, and sometimes they'll go to a common here and then run it to these, or they'll just go from one instrument to another. As you can see, this one bridges to this one, and then I think it bridges, okay, there's the input, and it goes to another thing. I think it goes to this. This is the fuel door switch, so that's ignition fed. Where else? And here's another one. I don't know where that goes, but more than likely these with the multiple posts are your power supply from the ignition switch. This one's been separate. Now this is your temperature gauge. As you can see, at one time it was been repaired. There's a West Valley. It was done locally in Sepulveda. Who knows when? But so anyways, if you want to mark these, which we will mark some of them, not all of them, because I can figure it out. If you ever really totally get lost when you're putting it together, one of your pieces of tape falls off or whatever, if you know what's your power supply, then when this is all back together, obviously, you hook up your battery, turn your key on, and then just take a test light or a voltmeter and look for the ones that are hot, and the gauge will generally, once we get it out, I'll show you, but they'll have markings where it's plus. That's always battery or voltage supply. One thing you have to watch out for if you do reconnect the battery is these 2 big wires here going to the ammeter. What the ammeter does, it tells you how much current the generator is putting out. And the way it does that is your generator has wire, the output wire, that's the business end, so it's sending all this extra voltage and current. It goes all the way to here, through this gauge, and then back to the car. So that's why when you're driving and you turn your headlights on, you'll see your ammeter move. It'll change because it senses that less is going to the rest of the car. It's drawing more. So these things are always hot. So if you touch it, if your battery's connected, you touch this, it's going to spark, you're going to jump back, and if you're lucky, it'll fall and disconnect. If you're not, those wires will turn into smoke, and it'll come out from under the hood, your dash, and everything else, and it'll scare the heck out of you and cause some, potentially cause a fire. So that's why the first thing you do is disconnect the battery. We're going to disconnect those 2, and for those of you who have an old positive ground car, which would be the early post-war cars, and you want to convert it to an alternator with a negative ground, the only thing you have to do on these 2 is switch the posts, because the current's flowing in a different direction is all. So that's. And if you get these wires confused and you start up your car and it goes to discharge, then you probably hooked it up backwards instead of charge. Now we'll start with those big wires they're holding us. Those are 11/32, I believe. A lot of going on back here, isn't there?
Sure is.
Okay, these are your ammeter wires. I am not going to label those two. I probably won't label any of them. Well, yeah. Here's what we'll do. Here's a good hint for you guys. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go temp. And be careful you don't touch anything on the interior with these. They are permanent. This goes to the temp gauge, so that nice little zip tie I put on these. You get them separated. I'm going to go around that.
You just label the cluster and not the actual wire?
You can do the wire. I recommend it for somebody who's not familiar with the cars. I will figure this out. So those are disconnected. These have spade terminals on them. This has been fixed and updated. Normally they're not. And that's a tight one.